Good morning and welcome back to the lecture series on refugee migration diaspora. So, today we are going to discuss the South Asian diaspora. According to Stephen Castles and Mark Miller, as they have mentioned in their work, The Age of Migration, I quote the critics here. There can be few people in either industrialized or less developed countries today who do not have personal experience of migration and its effects. This universal experience has become the hallmark of the age of migration. Unquote. So, the South Asian diaspora, which is estimated at around 24 million individuals, which is approximately 2% of the South Asian population altogether, primarily comprises 20 million Indians. And this is a study by Padma Rangaswamy, which is available in her work South Asian Diaspora. The South Asian diaspora is a result of the movement of people as well as goods, commodities, ideas, beliefs, and cultural habits from the Indian subcontinent, which is one of the largest diasporas in the world now. This diaspora's history is often divided into two distinct phases. One is the 19th century colonial phase, and then we have the 20th century post independence phase. While there are noticeable contrasts between these two phases, the colonial phase and the post colonial or the post independence phase, there also exists a remarkable continuity between the two phases, particularly in terms of the descendants that we have from the 19th century migrants. Right, the descendants from the two phases, have a kind of continuity in terms of experiences. So, as far as the 19th century migrants are concerned, the pre and the post independence phases have a remarkable continuity also. The descendants' experiences can be kind of interconnected, they can identify with each other's past in a way, the legacy that they carry forward. For instance, the Indian Caribbeans who settled in Canada or the Indians who migrated from Uganda to Britain and subsequently moved to the US highlight a certain interconnectedness of their histories. Now, looking at the historical context of the South Asian diaspora and talking about the early migration patterns, we see that the history of South Asian migration can be traced back to the early 19th century, primarily through the system of indentured labor. Following the abolition of slavery as an official process, colonial powers sought a certain alternative source of labor for plantations, which led to the recruitment of South Asians, particularly from India, in order to work in foreign lands, including the Caribbean, Africa, as well as Southeast Asia. The indentured labor migrants were often referred to as the Girmitias, right? So, Girmitia and Girmit are terms that are derived from a more formal word, agreement or contract, the labor contract, right? So, Girmitia is a more colloquial word used by the labor migrant population itself. So, indentured labor, as I was saying, is also referred to as Girmitia due to their signing of a Girmit or agreement, which was a fixed 5-year contract. Now, the Girmit system distinguished these migrants from other Indian laborers who typically operated under informal verbal agreements. The distinction became increasingly important as the indenture system became more formalized, and it represented one of the first modern labor contracts introduced to the Indian subcontinent, alongside the contracts that were signed by the sepoys or the foot soldiers in the Indian army, who often came from similar backgrounds as the labor population. This migration process created significant Indian communities in different foreign lands such as Trinidad, Guyana, Mauritius, and they established a diasporic identity which was characterized by cultural retention and adaptation. So, here I'm going to read an excerpt from Salman Rushdie's Imaginary Homelands. I have iterated these same lines in another lecture from this course, but I find these lines as vital, and so I'm repeating these lines for the sake of explaining, or and trying to understand the diasporic experience. So Rushdie says as follows, I quote: "Exiles or immigrants or expatriates are haunted by some sense of loss, some urge to reclaim, to look back, even at the risk of being mutated into pillars of salt. But if we do look back, we must also do so in the knowledge, which gives rise to profound uncertainties, that our physical alienation from India almost inevitably means that we will not be capable of reclaiming precisely the thing that was lost. That we will, in short, create fictions, not actual cities or villages, but invisible ones, imaginary homelands, Indias of the mind." Unquote. So, in addition to indentured labor, earlier forms of migration included the movement of merchant families who traveled for trade and commerce, particularly to East Africa as well as the Indian Ocean. So, these merchants laid the groundwork for the establishment of vibrant communities that would later flourish as diasporas while maintaining connections to their homeland through trade networks. In the post independence migration scenario, that is the mid century onward, we see another wave of migration from South Asia, particularly after the independence of India and the birth of Pakistan and Bangladesh in 1947. This period was marked by economic opportunities and political instabilities, which drove many South Asians to seek better prospects in the Western countries. And especially there was a bulk of population from South Asia moving to the United Kingdom, to Canada, as well as to the United States. The influx of South Asians into these regions led to the formation of distinct diasporic communities, which played crucial roles in their host societies while retaining cultural ties to their homeland, to their countries of origin. The colonial phase saw mass migrations driven by the demand for labor in plantations and colonial enterprises. Many South Asians were recruited as indentured laborers, a form of migration which involved significant hard work, hardship, but at the same time also established enduring cultural connections. In contrast, the post independence phase was marked by a shift in motivations, with many South Asians migrating for educational and economic opportunities, which were often driven by aspirations for a better life. This historical trajectory reveals that the South Asian diaspora is not merely a collection of isolated experiences. This entire, diasporic identity or the discourse centering this diaspora is shaped by shared histories of colonialism, global capitalism, as well as cultural exchanges. The interconnected stories of these diverse communities emphasize the need for a more nuanced understanding of diaspora that acknowledges the ongoing relationships between migrants and their homelands, as well as the complex realities of identity and belonging. So, mainly comprising groups of exiles, refugees, migrants, as well as other populations, the diasporas actively participate in the political dynamics of both their home as well as host countries. The study of the South Asian diaspora has greatly benefited from the contributions of various scholars, which include Khalid Koser, Rina Arya, Nassim Taleb, as well as Kiran A.L. Kaur, all of who have explored its complexities, its various facets, and have studied the discourse centering diaspora through diverse lenses. Each scholar brings unique insights into this economic, cultural, and gender dimensions of migration, thereby illuminating the multifaceted nature of diasporic experiences. Khalid Koser has dealt with the phenomenon of migration in his multiple works. His work, titled International Migration, a very short introduction, categorizes various forms of migration, including voluntary migration, forced migration, such as refugees and asylum seekers, as well as economic migration. Corsair illustrates how these categories influence migrants' experiences as well as the challenges that they face. The author emphasizes that migration is not just a local or national issue but a global phenomenon which affects countries and communities worldwide. So he examines the interconnectedness of migration trends and policies across different regions through his different works. In the chapter titled Why Migration Matters, written in 2009, Khalid Hossein notes that, I quote the critic here, after slavery's collapse, indentured laborers from China, India, and Japan moved overseas in significant numbers, 1.5 million from India alone, to work in the plantations of the European powers. Unquote. So, Corsair highlights a significant trend in migration, which is the rapid increase in women's representation among the migrants. And this began in the second half of the 20th century, especially in the 1960s, and it further accelerated in the 1990s at the turn of the century. So by 2005, nearly half of the world's authorized migrants were women, and notably in regions such as Europe, North America, Latin America, as well as the Caribbean, the former Soviet Union as well, and then in the Oceania, there were in fact more female than male authorized migrants. So we see that the female authorized migrants were more visible in these parts of the globe, in these countries, as compared to the male authorized migrants. Corsair points out that while women have traditionally migrated to join their partners, there has also been an increasing number that are now migrating independently. In many cases, these women are the primary earners for their families that they leave behind. Several factors have contributed to this shift. To quote the author, in trends, especially evident in Asia, there has been growth in migration of women for domestic work. This is sometimes called the maid trade. In organized migration for marriage, with the women sometimes referred to as mail order brides, and also in the trafficking of women, above all into the sex industry. Unquote. So, maid trade involves migration which is driven by the demand for household labor in wealthier countries, in the Western countries. And it is coupled with the economic pressures faced by the women in their home countries. So, there are both the factors, the push and the pull factor. There is a push factor from back from their home country where the women are facing economic pressures, and there is this imperative to earn in order to run their household. And on the other hand, the Western countries offer varied opportunities. So there is this trend, this tendency of women taking up some household labor demanded by the wealthier countries. Particularly, we can think of the European countries and America, where the women are moving in bulk from the Asian countries. So, in the mail order bride phenomenon, women from developing countries enter into arranged marriages with men from more affluent nations. It is especially the NRI, population from South Asia who are working in the Western countries and who have a very good, professional profile, who have a very good career to boast, and they choose women from their homeland, take them as bride to these affluent nations, right? So these arranged marital relationships are also coded as mail order bride phenomenon. Many women from nations such as the Philippines, Indonesia, and Bangladesh migrate to cities in the Middle East, Europe, as well as North America, seeking better job prospects and the chance to send remittances back home. So, Parvati Raghuram, in her work Women, Migration and Citizenship, a global perspective, delves into a similar kind of analysis, and she builds on it in order to include the intricacies of women's experiences within the South Asian diaspora, particularly emphasizing how these individuals, how these the female populace in the diaspora, the female South Asian diaspora, navigate their identities across various cultural landscapes. So, the essays written in the edited volume South Asian Women in the Diaspora by Bhagirathi Mani and Parvati Raghuram, this work came out in 2003. It explores how South Asian women and feminist academics navigate specific national ideologies of difference and contexts of commodification, reflecting the complexities of identity and representation in diasporic settings. The work deals with how South Asian women confront Orientalist constructions. The essays present in this book analyze the politics of style among South Asian women, drawing on familiar examples such as the film Mississippi Masala, and also introduces newer discussions on cross-dressing South Asians as well as the experiences of South Asian women entrepreneurs in fashion industry. So Fawzia Ahmed's work, still in progress, Methodological Dilemmas, Tensions and Contradictions in Theorizing South Asian Women, specifically addresses the representations of Muslim womanhood and masculinity in the UK during the period that followed September 11, 2001. So, in the post September 11, 2001 period, what the Muslim populace underwent and experienced in the UK has been recorded through this work by Fawzia Ahmed. Ahmed examines the impact of state policies that would particularly target the Muslim subjects, demonstrating how these policies are intertwined with broader national agendas that are related to race, class, as well as religion. So, the concluding section, called Engagements, features 4 essays that highlight women's interventions in local spaces, and it offers a rich exploration of the women's roles in various communities. Samina Zahir's essay on a community arts project in Birmingham illustrates how cultural initiatives can empower women and foster a sense of belonging. Further, Rani Kawale's chapter on queer women's public spaces in London examines the complexities of identity and community, revealing how these spaces can serve as sites of resistance as well as affirmation, right? So, we have earlier discussed through authors such as Shani Mutu and Sham Silvadurai, how, and even Rohinton Mystery, how a person with a different body and a different sexuality, a person that is queer, transgendered, lesbian, or gay, finds it more difficult to interact in a host society that is outside of one's home country. So the person is multiply vulnerable, multiply marginalized, once for the skin color, for being a visible minority, and then again owing to one's ethnicity as well as, one's language and the sexual orientation, right? So there are resistance and affirmations happening at multiple levels, So the question of identity, community, and even social spaces is actually fraught with all these problems, these questions. Hasmita Ramji's discussion of Gujarati Kutchi Hindu women in London further emphasizes the diverse ways in which cultural practices and identities are negotiated in a diasporic context. We have essays, some seminal essays by critics and scholars such as Nandi Bhatia, Nainika Mukherjee, and Hasmita Ramji, which represent an innovative approach to the concept of diaspora. By centering South Asian studies, these contributions suggest that South Asia itself can be viewed as a node within the broader framework of diaspora. So, South Asia is one of the points of contact within the broader frame of diaspora, further challenging the traditional notion of a fixed point of origin. Ramji's contributions delve into the lived realities of Gujarati Kachi Hindu women in diasporic settings, exploring how cultural practices and community engagements shape their identities. She addresses the intersections of ethnicity, gender, and transnationalism, highlighting the ways these women negotiate their cultural heritage while adapting to new environments. Together, these essays underscored the importance of understanding diaspora and transnationalism as fluid and interconnected processes. So, diaspora and transnationalism are two interrelated concepts which explore the experiences and identities of migrants and their communities in a globalized world. They both examine how people maintain connections across borders and the cultural, social, and political implications of these connections. So, there is a significant overlap between the two concepts. They are interrelated but not quite the same. While diaspora and transnationalism are sometimes used interchangeably, as I was saying, the two terms reflect different intellectual genealogies and frameworks because they focus on different aspects of the migrant experience and identity. Diaspora approaches typically concentrate on the relationship between homelands, which are often referred to as referent origin. So, while diaspora emphasizes cultural ties and collective memory related to a specific homeland, on the other hand, we have transnationalism focusing on the active, dynamic connections and identities that migrants develop across borders, right? So, talking about a diaspora and diaspora discourse, homeland plays a central, a key role in towards explaining the question of collective memory and cultural ties. So, homeland plays as the referent origin, which is sometimes not that much available or not that much important when talking in terms of transnationalism. So, in their work, Diaspora and Transnationalism Concepts, Theories, and Methods, Rainer Bobok and Thomas Feist note that while diasporas can be considered as transnational communities due to their cross border connections and cross border communications and cultural exchanges, not all transnational communities can be classified as diasporas. So, while diaspora primarily refers to religious, ethnic, as well as national communities, transnational approaches extend to a wider array of social formations, which include networks of business persons, social movements, as well as various forms of civic engagement that transcend national borders. Diaspora is often associated with a specific country of origin and its corresponding host countries and focuses on the organizational and cultural ties that bind these groups together. On the other hand, transnational communities can include cross border village communities or borderland communities that may not fit the diasporic framework. So, we will end our lecture here today. Let's discuss further on the transnational communities and how they are different from the diaspora communities. Thank you.